We can see through the biblical history that there are two ways of reading humanity. Reading humanity in her distorted state and reading humanity in her redeemed state. And this is really clear in the two accounts of the kings of Israel. So the community, incredibly, have been issued a decree under King Cyrus and are able to go back into Jerusalem, having been in exile in Babylon. Babylon capitulates to Persia. Under Persia, a decree that all peoples can go back to their own communities and nations and worship their own gods in their own temples. So this community has returned, but they are not a free people. They are still under the Persian Empire. So what is it? What does it mean to them to be part of this Jewish community who have returned to Jerusalem? Well, what the writer to the Chronicles does is he writes a depiction not only of where they've come from, but also where they're going. And we see a number of differences for this reason between the writers of the Kings and the Chronicles. Kings are writing to an exiled community, explaining in very simple terms why they're in exile. They have violated God's covenant. The writer to the Chronicles explains that they are back in community because God's covenant faithfulness has been applied to them and he has restored them. And so we see through Kings and Chronicles two very different readings of humanity. We see on the one hand the kings, very real depictions of both the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah, whereas we see the writer of the Chronicles only records the kings of Judah. And on the whole, he records incredibly idealized depictions of these kings, king after king after king, representing well covenant faithfulness to God and God's covenant faithfulness to his people. He even speaks of how Manasseh, the most evil king Manasseh, who sacrificed his children in the fire to the god Molech, repents at the end of his life and is restored. And any violations on design he includes, for example, about David, are only because he wants to make the point about covenant faithfulness and God's plan, for example, the rebuilding of the temple. So he does not include David's adultery with Bathsheba, but the writer to the Chronicles does include one violation of David, that he called for a census to be made. And as a result, after making a sacrifice to repent of this sin of pride, he makes a sacrifice on Mount Moriah, not only where Abraham had sacrificed Isaac, but where Solomon's temple was then built. So everything the writer to the Chronicles puts in is recovering to this restored community. This is who you are, and this is who you are destined to be. So the writer of the Kings starts with David rather undignified in his old age. The writer to the Chronicles starts with Adam, humanity. The writer of the Kings ends with a king in exile. The writer of the Chronicles ends with the rather beautiful expression, Aliyah, let us go up, an expression still used by the Jewish diaspora today if they would like to become Israeli citizens. And in fact, this is the last word of the Hebrew scriptures, the Tanakh, because their scriptures are ordered the same content as our Old Testament, but in a different order. So we have in the Kings a very real description of a deteriorating humanity, but in Chronicles an idealized depiction. But even within that, there is still this sense of longing, not just looking back to the design of Adam, but forward to a community who will still keep covenant with God despite not being a free people, despite being under the Persian Empire. That is their instruction. If they keep covenant with him, he will keep covenant with them. And there is that sense of destiny within Chronicles, that there is a looking forward to one, a Messiah, an anointed one, a son of David, a new Solomon, who will fulfill completely God's design to have a king who keeps covenant faithfulness and brings blessing to his community and to his people. So the people have returned, They've been restored, but they are still waiting. They are going up, but they are waiting for their Mashiach, their anointed one, to come.